Welcome to New York's number two sports show. The Yankees take 2 of 3 against the Texas Rangers. They go 7-2 on the 9-game road trip against Boston, Houston, and Texas. They don't get the sweep, kind of similar to the Astros series, where the Yankees take the first 2 games. The offense really doesn't do much of anything. They're shut out by Nathan Eovaldi in game 3, but one that, again, going in, I felt like 2 out of 3 would be really good. And that's exactly what you get. So to go, look, Boston, Houston, and Texas, as currently constituted, are not the greatest teams. I think, if you were to have circled back a few years ago and, you go 7-2, that'd be really tremendous. But still, whenever you go on the road, to still have that record is great. Yankees sit at 20-11 overall. And they'll head home, and after we discuss this Texas Rangers series, they will face an American League East team in the Baltimore Orioles, which will begin a 7-game homestand, actually, which includes 3 games against Texas. So when it comes to the Rangers, they'll face them in short order twice. Same with the Orioles, where they'll go on the road against Baltimore a couple weeks from now. But a lot to discuss, and I want to jump into it as far as the roster. A lot of things going down, some injuries to speak of, and a lot of unknowns as well. Let's start on the pitching front. Now, while I was recording the last episode, Luis Gil was actually optioned down to AAA, and I had talked about how he wasn't going to last much longer in the rotation, and I kind of thought it would transition probably from Gil to Rodon. It doesn't exactly go that way, but I felt like whenever the time came for Gil to be out of the rotation, it made more sense to send him down as a starter than to move him to the bullpen at the major league level. And that's exactly what they're doing. Maybe we'll see him again. It's such a long season that even though the Yankees have so much depth in the rotation, we probably will see Luis Gil again at some point. But he deserved to go down. He really has not looked good, despite what was a solid outing against the Red Sox to start before. Gil goes to AAA, and so he's out of the rotation. Taking his place, essentially, is Elmer Rodríguez, who made his debut in game 3. It's interesting. His command, he's known for such good command, but with it being his first start, the emotions are certainly running high. He kept him in it. He ends up going 4 innings, 2 runs. We'll discuss it more at length once we get to game 3, but Elmer Rodríguez, he's in that spot for now as the 5th starter, and figure he'll probably get a couple more starts. But he presumably, barring other injuries, he will be sent back down to AAA. But still good to get him a look, give him some experience. The numbers in the minors have been good. Really the 2 guys you hear about that are kind of knocking on the door are Carlos Legrand and Elmer Rodríguez. 2 different style pitchers. Both actually were in the World Baseball Classic. But Rodríguez they got from the Boston Red Sox in the Carlos Narvaez deal before last season. So there's that as far as the pitchers go. The hitters are where it's a little bit more interesting and kind of, what is going to happen. And there's more questions after this final game. It is Giancarlo Stanton who ultimately does go on the injured list. Kind of figured that would happen, and it took him a while. And the good news there is you like to think that it's not going to be a long-term injury. At the same time, there's really no need to rush him back at this point. When will we see? Look, I wouldn't be surprised if, that he misses, at least all of May. I don't think that's, a unreasonable thought when it comes to Stanton, but it could be a lot less than that too, right? I don't think it's going to be the minimum 10 game. As far as the way they were talking, I think he'll be out for a little bit here, but I don't think he's going to be at multiple months. Stanton sometimes is, but it seems like it's a low grade calf strain. So, I think, it's already been, a little less than a week since the original injury happened. I think another 4, weeks plus, I think is more than reasonable for him to return from, but you can never predict these things. So Stanton off the roster. What originally happens is Jason Dominguez is back, and was kind of filling in that DH role for Stanton. Now, of course, in the last game of the series, he played left field because they wanted Judge to play DH. But you get what I'm saying. Essentially, Dominguez kind of takes the Stanton spot on the roster. Um, but to fast forward, Dominguez actually leaves game three. He gets hit by a pitch from Nathan Eovaldi on the back elbow, the left elbow. And so we're unsure right now. It's called a left elbow contusion. He's still getting imaging done. It's inconclusive at this point. So I feel bad for him. He might go on the injured list. Maybe not, though. You don't know right now, but he's in play to lose that spot. What also happens within this whole situation is Max Schumann gets called up. And to me, Anthony Volpe's kind of looming, although with that, they're kind of being very coy about the whole situation as far as Volpe. And I'm kind of glad about that. Like, it doesn't seem there's any assurances. I think we're probably going to see Anthony Volpe, in this home, probably in the Baltimore Orioles series, maybe as soon as Friday. And I don't know whether Dominguez, like what that kind of does. It shouldn't really necessarily affect Volpe so much so as maybe just roster spot purposes. Um, But what I was going to say was, it seemed as if Volpe would sooner than later take the Schumann spot. Schumann's a utility guy, can play infield, outfield. He kind of gets that spot over Oswaldo Cabrera, who has, both of them didn't have great AAA numbers. But Schumann had a pretty good spring. Cabrera's come back from the injury. It doesn't seem like he's quite back to what he had been. Oswaldo was never a great hitter, but still the numbers are pretty bad. And Schumann, they like him for, again, what he can kind of bring, all over the field. And so now with the Dominguez injury, Schumann might stay. But Randall Grichuk is designated for assignment. And look, I don't think Grichuk was going to do a whole lot. I think that was that was going to happen at some point. But with Randall Grichuk, if they knew that Dominguez was going to get, if somehow they had a crystal ball, it just, the timing was kind of shitty on this one, where if Dominguez does hit the IL, you've now designated for assignment Randall Grichuk, which again, I think that they came to the conclusion in seeing him that it probably wasn't going to work out. Look, maybe he could have found sort of a niche role as that guy against lefties, but again, I'm completely fine with it, but the timing was kind of shitty. So Randall Grichuk off the roster. We've probably seen the last of Randall Grichuk as a Yankee. I mean, crazier things have happened. I suppose he could accept an assignment to Scranton Wilkes-Barre, and then he works his way back, but it's unlikely. So again, we got to find out what happens with Jason Dominguez. Volpe is probably coming back fairly soon. I thought it would be for Schumann. It could be for Dominguez. So that's kind of where we're at. I think I have it all covered there, and that's kind of a lot where things were kind of stagnant as far as the roster, right? Everyone was kind of healthy. And now lately you've had, a bit of movement with, whether it be just injuries or an effectiveness to kind of move things around a bit. Let's jump into best player and worst player of the series. And I think on both sides, it ended up being kind of difficult. For best player of the series, I'm going to go with Aaron Judge. And really a close second was Cam Schlittler, who yet again was great. And not far behind him, very close, was Max Fried. It's right. One of those situations again where it's Schlittler and Fried both doing well, but I'm going to give it to Judge. And the only reason why it became close was because Judge didn't have a good game three. It was basically through two games, a no-brainer for Aaron Judge, but he was a heavy contributor in both of their wins. For the series, he ends up going 5 for 11 with 2 homers through the first 2 games. He was actually 5 for 7. I mean, he was great, really, both of them. The first game, really, really good, went 3 for 3 with 2 doubles and a homer, right? So, the extra base hits, 4 extra base hits in those first 2 games. But Aaron Judge, he is tied for the most home runs in Major League Baseball with 12, right? So where he gets off to kind of a slow start, we're at the end of April, and already he's got 12 homers in 31 games, tied with Murakami of the Chicago White Sox. So really impressive stuff for Judge. As far as the worst player of the series, in this one, you could have gone a lot of different ways as well. I'm going to go with Ryan McMahon, who I've given it to before as far as worst player of the series. And very close behind him was Trent Grisham. Very close. And a few others as well, but I feel like it kind of came down to those two. But we're going to go with McMahon. He goes 1 for 10 with 5 strikeouts and a pretty big error. Now, look, he made a bunch of sparkling defensive plays as well. So don't get me wrong. Like, he made some good plays too, but he makes an error in game two in the ninth inning that almost led to disaster. So I can't ignore that either. But again, what bothers me is again in this series, and Ryan McMahon does, get a decent amount of walks. However, Ryan McMahon has gone, and I understand not all these are starts, but his last walk was in the Kansas City series. So that whole road trip, no walks for Ryan McMahon. Yeah, but the 5 strikeouts, not particularly good looking at bats. And the overall numbers obviously aren't very good. He's batting 167 with a 518 OPS. Um, and because of all the righties the Yankees faced, we didn't see Ahmed Rosario at all, which was a little disappointing. I like to believe in this Orioles series, beyond the fact that the Yankees faced a lefty the first game of the series. I I want to believe that Rosario against a righty, a guy that maybe has a neutral splits or reverse splits, that they'll go with him over McMahon. I just think you live with, and again, you can bring McMahon in, sixth, seventh inning and beyond. If you're winning, I have no problem with that, right? That's the way to utilize it for me. Get Rosario's offense in the game right from the jump and then go from there. But again, though, Trent Grisham very much was not far behind him. Trent Grisham went 1 for 12. There was a lot of other pretty bad statistical, look at some on the whole this season. There's some pretty bad numbers. And I know the sample size, you're about 20% through the season, so there's a ways to go. But Trent Grisham's batting 151. I understand there's bad luck. I understand the underlying numbers aren't as bad as that would suggest. But 151, I mean, that's 15 points worse than Ryan McMahon. I mean, and Trent Grisham bats leadoff every game against righties. So for me, as we figure out what's going on with Dominguez, I really want Trent Grisham's playing time to be cut just a bit. I understand he doesn't really play much against lefties to begin with, and I would continue it that way. Although now that Grichuk's gone, to me, yeah, Max Schumann's probably going to stick around. Not that he's a guy that you really want out there regularly, but I don't think that even if Dominguez were healthy, I don't think that they would love him against lefties. I don't blame them. So it could be a bit of a committee situation. Look, what may happen, here's a real answer, is if Volpe comes back, Caballero may shift to a corner outfield spot as well. We haven't really seen him much in left as a Yankee. I don't really recall last year. Maybe a little bit, but not too often. So again, it's in flux, but Trent Grisham, I think his playing time should decrease a bit, understanding that he has run into some bad luck, but it hasn't been very good. So here we go. Game one. This was one where I felt like the Yankees had the best pitching advantage of the three, and that did play itself out in terms of what you got when the starters were in there. Max Fried against Jack Leiter, that worked. Fried gets the win to go to 4-1, 6 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, ERA down to 2.09. He's been really good. Max Fried has been, a .80 whip is great to see, a 161 opposing batting average. These are elite numbers. Look, the strikeout totals aren't gaudy by any means, but, really like what I've seen from Max Fried so far this season. And what you get in this game is Jack Leiter allowing 3 homers. He gets the loss to go to 1-2, 6 innings, 8 hits, 4 runs, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts, and damage is done early. And another situation, as far as I want to just get this out the way with Caballero, where it was another sort of game where not exactly great base running by Caballero. And the ironic thing is, whenever he has fucked up on the bases, literally right after that, the Yankees score. So it hasn't affected them from a win like in the Astros series. They won the games where that happened, but it could have been more damage, I guess. But Caballero, you kind of live with the good and the bad there, where he's very aggressive, but it's the way sometimes that it happens. This was one where he got picked off. You just can't have that there. But the Yankees kind of catch a break in the third inning where Trent Grisham, the one hit he had was actually extremely lucky. It goes off of Jack Leiter. He probably should have fielded it cleanly. And then Corey Seager, who had a rough series, Corey Seager, more at the plate than fielding, but Seager tries to barehand it. And I think that Grisham doesn't have a whole lot of speed. He probably, if he just gloves that, despite it going off the Leiter's glove initially, I think that they get Grisham. But it ends up being a single, and the Yankees take pretty big advantage of that. Really big advantage of that. Ben Rice hits an opposite field homer, his 10th homer of the year. So that's great to see, right? Ben Rice, we think of him as crushing, pull home runs. to see him go the other way with that sort of ferocity is great. And so Rice, the magical, beginning of the season continues. It's his 10th homer. He's kind of slotted in now for a while against righties in that number 2 hole between Grisham and Judge. They've stuck with that. And then Aaron Judge, the next batter, Rice ties him up at 10. Judge takes the lead back at 11. Impressive shots for both of them. They go back to back, make it 3-0. And then Jazz Chisholm continues at the time his sort of home run binge as when he had done it. That was his 3rd homer in 5 games at the time, dating back to the last game against the Red Sox. So that makes it 4-0 because, without that Chisholm home run, he would have been in that worst player conversation as well. But to me, with that home run alone, with the Yankees not providing much offense, he stayed out of that conversation. So that makes it 4-0 Yanks right there. That'd be all that they would score, though, for the rest of the game. Not going to get too much into ABS as far as ABS stuff specifically, other than just the Yankees, in my opinion, still, they're just, I don't know where the numbers lie, but yeah, just the times they do challenge, it doesn't go that well. I think Cody Bellinger once or maybe twice in this series got it wrong. But again, that's all I'm going to get into on the ABS. Not a whole lot that really comes to mind beyond that. So 4-0 Yanks at this point in time. Max Fried goes 6 innings. Great job by him. In the 7th inning, Camilo Doval comes in, and Doval gives up a homer to Jock Peterson, his 2nd homer of the year. Again, Doval, the role for him still feels more than what it should be. I know he's not exactly totally locked in the 8th inning role. It's somewhat of a committee, but still, in my opinion, I think that Doval, there's a little bit too much trust in Doval. And to be fair, look, he came into a 4-1 game in the 7th. It's not exactly the most high leverage situation, but I could still tell by his usage that he is viewed in a lot of ways as potentially the top righty behind Bednar. And I suppose when I put it that way, but I guess I'm looking at it, not that I trust Fernando Cruz so much because everything being equal, give me Cruz over Doval right now, in my opinion. So Doval gives it that home run and makes it 4-1. The 8th inning, Tim Hill gets into some rare trouble where a couple of walks against Duran and Young make it a situation where Seager's up as the tying run, but a nice play by Jazz. Seager hit the ball kind of on the screws, and Hill gets out of it. So, Hill, it's usually, lately it's been where it's soft contact. Here, again, a couple of walks, but he gets out of it, and they keep it a 3-run game. Let's go to the bottom of the 9th. David Bednar comes in, and Bednar, it's funny, he gets a couple of saves, and the defense behind him doesn't exactly come through. And so for me, as far as him being best or worst player, it didn't really, it ends up kind of netting out because again, he gets the saves. He kind of messed up himself, but also the defense does fail him a bit. You end up with a spot where, and there was a Yankees challenge play that I don't think is worth discussing because they won the game, but there was a close call with one out, with no out and one on, but it ends up working out fine for the Yankees. Basically, you get a Josh Smith ground ball to Jazz that should have ended the game, but he boots it. And so that extends it and makes it a lot more dicey than it needed to be. Alejandro Osuna comes up and gets an RBI single. An unearned run goes against Bednar. And so it's 4-2, 2 on, 2 out. But Bednar gets Duran to ground out to Caballero to end it. So that game got a little bit more interesting than it needed to. Game 2 as well. Although game 2 was always more close. This one should have been more of a runaway that wasn't. Bednar gets his 8th save. And it's no harm, no foul, essentially. Game 2. Let's go to game 2. Great pitchers duel between Cam Schlittler and Jacob deGrom. As advertised, and it was just a big, only 1 run was allowed between those two, between the 12 innings that they had. 4-1 is Cam Schlittler, so he matches Fried for wins with 4. 6 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. His ERA is down to 1.51, which is, unbelievable. 49 strikeouts in 41 2/3 innings, a .74 whip, an opposing batting average of 168. Elite stuff from Cam Schlittler, who's only made 21 regular season starts in his career. I mean, what he's doing is just, how could it not make you happy as a Yankee fan? The Yankees, the 1 run they get against deGrom is in the 1st inning. An Aaron Judge 2-out single, and then Cody Bellinger just barely missed its 2-run homer, goes off the top of the wall, good for an RBI double for Cody. to knock Judge in to make it 1-0. And then Jazz actually got into one that Evan Carter tracks down. After that, DeGrom kind of settles in. Jacob DeGrom picks up his first loss of the season, 2-1, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, no walks, 5 strikeouts. And DeGrom, he's still a very good pitcher. Not quite what he used to be, but not a whole lot worse at the same time. Just a matter of health with him. And a couple of really great catches by Bellinger and Grisham in the first inning to get Schlittler kind of into it, right? Off of Nimmo and Young, a couple of really nice plays in the outfield for the Yankees. But let's take this thing all the way to let's take it to this bottom of the sixth where Cam Schlittler runs into a little bit of trouble. 2 on, no out. And what's great about Schlittler is that when he needs to lock in, he does. He gets Seager to strike out, Peterson to pop out, and Berger to fly out to end that inning. And so his night is over. Big insurance home run by Austin Wells. Lefty. Wells is kind of finding it a bit. The overall numbers still aren't good, but he's reached 200. He's gotten there, and the OPS 688, there's things to like about Austin Wells lately. And where sometimes I talk about, Wells versus Scar right now, and it's going to stay that way. Wells is well ahead of the Scar to the point where, Scar played game 3. I think down the line, I wouldn't mind having Ben Rice as a catching option and, kind of weeding your way off of a Scar a bit. But again, that's more of a conversation for way, way down the road, not now. But Austin Wells, big homer off of Jalen Beeks. Again, a lefty versus lefty shot. And so the Yankees take a 2-0 lead. Brent Hedrick comes on in the 7th. And he got a little bit of trouble himself, but gets out of it. Again, Hedrick, it's been very good this year. The ERA is maybe better than what it deserves to be, but I like what I've seen from Brent Hedrick. He gets his 3rd hold of the season with that. Again, it was 2 on, 2 out by the end of it, but he strikes out Brandon Nimmo to end the 7th. Bottom of the 8th, Fernando Cruz, he gets into trouble. It's 2 on, no out as well. He walks Seager. It makes it 1st and 2nd, no out, but he makes a tremendous play where the Rangers had Jock Peterson bunt. Don't exactly agree with them doing that. Texas seems like a team that likes to bunt more than most. I noticed that in this series. But a great play by Cruz where he's literally on his ass, throws it to McMahon, and McMahon makes a nice scoop to get the guy to 3rd. It was the only play Cruz had, and they make it. Then it settles him in as he strikes out Berger and Duran. So Fernando Cruz, he gets his 4th hold. Cruz is one of those guys that, he, in a big situation, he may get into trouble, but he most times gets out of it, right? Where in maybe lower leverage spots, you may see him mess up more. So that's a good quality to have. In the 9th inning, it ends up being a big insurance run for Aaron Judge. 12th homer of the season, 2nd homer in as many. Actually, he had homered in 3 straight games, come to think of it, dating back to the Astros series. So that makes it 3-0 Yankees. And at the bottom of the 9th, it seems like it's going to be smooth sailing for Bednar, but McMahon has a throwing error against Andrew McCutcheon, but it all starts with a bobble. The bobble leads to the missed throw a bit. And again, if you're Ryan McMahon, who, again, is very good defensively, with him doing what he does offensively, you got to not make those mistakes. And Yankee killer Danny Jansen gets an RBI triple. An initial scare that Trent Grisham might have gotten hurt on the play. He ended up being fine. He was, I think he banged his knee against the wall, but he was okay. Makes it 3-1. And then Bednar hits Brandon Nimmo. Nimmo had no intention of getting out of the way there, but, they're not going to call anything there. And so now it's runners on the corners, 3-1 game, and Josh Young gets an RBI single. So this has potential to totally be a disaster loss for the Yankees. But David Bednar, as he does, it's not pretty. It hasn't been pretty this season. Like last season, it was very efficient, in my opinion, in the regular season. But Bednar in the World Baseball Classic and now, most times he gets out of it. And it was Corey Seager who grounds into a 4-6-3 double play, and Bednar picks up his 9th save of the season. Yankees get the series win. And now they go for the sweep in game 3, but it was unsuccessful. And they get shut out. It ends up being their 2nd shut of the season, the first time being against the A's when Jeffrey Springs was on the mound. Nathan Eovaldi, it doesn't matter what he's doing. He was struggling coming into this. He just basically kills the Yankees. The former Yankee, who was on the Yankees in 2015 and 2016, former Red Sox, Eovaldi gets the win, goes to 3-4, 7 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts. Elmer Rodríguez, in his debut, he gets the loss. 4 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts, and is well ahead by pitch. So he was known for having really good command. That command wasn't there. And look, he went the first 4 innings scoreless. He was able to keep the Yankees in it really the whole way through. And so it's not as if he got blown up. He wasn't hit particularly hard, but it was a bit of a grind. And that's kind of what ends up happening. So, not a whole lot of opportunity for the Yankees against Evaldi. The Yankees, the chances were few and far between. I felt like Ascara was in a couple of spots earlier on and struck out with a runner on second and one out in the second. You know, uh, Rodriguez gets out of a bases loaded spot in the second, which was nice. Um, in the fourth, there's 2 on, 2 out. Ascara grounds out. That's why I was tempted to go with Ascara, but he only played 1 game. Wouldn't have been fair to go with him for the worst player of the series. But Dominguez gets hit by the pitch in the fourth inning, and so Max Schumann replaces him. And again, we'll find out what happens to Dominguez. But in the bottom of the fifth is where Rodriguez's struggles come back to bite. Hit by pitch to Alejandro Osuna and a walk to Ezekiel Duran. You can't do that there to the 8 and 9 hitters. Brandon Nimmo then singles off the glove of Ben Rice. Ben Rice was playing in. It's a play that Rice I would have liked to have had him make. They've really been sticking with Rice, even in late game situations where everything being equal, even at Paul Goldschmidt's age, he probably gives you the more clean first base. And I have no problem with them, again, sticking with Rice. But if I was in a playoff situation, I would still feel a little bit more comfortable with Goldschmidt. I wish that Rice made that play. It leads the bases loaded, no out, and Josh Jung gets a 2-run single through the hole between short and third, and Elmer Rodríguez's day is over. 2-0 game, but Brent Hedrick keeps them in it. Hedrick is able to get 3 outs, keeps the score at 2-0. And again, Evaldi just doing the job. Jake Bird comes in for Hedrick in the 6th inning, but it was in the 7th where Jake Bird allows the run. Leadoff double for Ezekiel Duran and RBI single for Sam Haggerty, who came in for Brandon Nimmo, who in that 5th inning hurt his hamstring, tweaked it on the base pad. So 3-0 Texas. Tim Hill comes on to finish the inning. So again, for Jake Bird, it's interesting. The walk to strikeout ratio is very good, but the ERA sits at 7. So Bird, the results aren't great, and he'll be a guy I think that kind of goes back and forth between AAA and the big leagues. Jacob Latz, the lefty, comes on in the 8th inning, and he ends up pitching 2 scoreless innings for the save. A 2-inning save for Latz. You had a Fernando Cruz 8th inning mixed in between there. He's pitched a lot lately, Cruz. But anyway, Texas wins this 3-0. So Yankees, unfortunately, don't get the sweep, but a really successful road trip going 7-2. And now Baltimore comes to town. The Orioles. And the Yankees catch a minor break where the Orioles had a rainout today. So they have a doubleheader the day before the series begins, which is probably going to lead to more bullpen usage. And what it does do is it kind of affects the rotation where the Yankees won't face Chris Bassett. Now, Chris Bassett's had success against the Yankees. He has struggled so far to start the season, but who knows? It could have been an Evaldi light situation. So now this is how it lines up. It'll be Will Warren. So with Rodriguez filling in to that spot rotation, everyone moved back a day. Will Warren will pitch game 1 against Trevor Rogers. So expect to see more of a right-handed Yankee lineup. Game 2 will be Ryan Weathers against Kyle Bradish. Game 3 will be Max Fried against Shane Baz, the former Tampa Bay Ray. And then it's a rare wraparound series, Friday to Monday. Monday night will be Cam Schlittler, and it was supposed to be Chris Bassett. Not sure who it'll be now. They're going to have to figure something out there with the rain out. But a big series. The Yankees got swept at Tampa. They swept the Red Sox at Fenway. And so now here you have your first Yankee Stadium AL East series. And where I'll leave off on this is, 4-game series, they are tough to win. Look, we saw that Angels series at home where they split the 4 there. But winning 3 out of 4 is within reason. I would be very happy if they can win 3 out of 4. I'll be a little disappointed if they split, even though I know that that's very possible. But again, with it being at home, with you having, of course, Fried and Schlittler to kind of end the series, I'm hopeful that they can find a way to win, 3 out of 4 here. And I think that these division games, more than anything, they're always important. But with the way the American League landscape looks, I think your toughest competition may come within the division. So again, a lot of roster stuff to figure out. We'll discuss that next episode. What's up with Dominguez as far as his injury? Is Anthony Volpe going to be back and activated for this Orioles series? And then how much does he play? Does Caballero lose the shortstop job? A lot to figure out. But At the end of the day, Yankees road trip concludes at a 7-2 mark, and the Yankees have won 4 series in a row, and now they will head home to start a 7-game homestand.